welcome to the Zoom Out podcast. I'm Tim Niemeyer. Today, my guest is Scott Lindberg. Scott, thank you for joining me on the podcast.
My honor, Tim. I'm really excited about doing this.
Yeah, me too. It's been a while. Scott and I met back in Miami last year at the Bitcoin conference. Scott, I first found out about you through your game, HODL UP, which is an amazing game I want to talk about a little bit for the audience. But he and his wife, Tali, they also co-founded Free Market Kids. They are also co-host the podcast Bitcoin Homeschoolers. You're getting into your own homeschooling curriculum. There is so much you do. In addition to being a former veteran, a former Army veteran, you also co-lead the Louisville Bitcoin meetup. What else do you do, man? You do it all.
It's been fun. I spent my whole career in like the quote unquote regular job.
Yeah.
And we have 4 kids, and they're 17 to 21 now. So they're done with all of the high school stuff. And this is the first time we're really going 100%, my wife and I, on the entrepreneur path. And so it's very different, but it is so fulfilling. Yeah. I've never felt so fulfilled. And so you list off all these things. Well, there's another 20, 30 things behind that we're excited about. And you're like, when you work on stuff that you're passionate about, I mean, it's I don't want to say it's not work. It is a lot of work.
No, you wake up wanting to do it.
It's just different. Yeah, it's different. It's a different mentality when you have a purpose and you have a mission. And my wife and I love what we're doing, and we love the people that we're meeting. We have met some of the most incredible people ever since we've done this, that it is just mind-boggling. So we have a lot of stuff going on. We have a lot of stuff that we have to say no to or will delay. But it is the analogy of it being a rabbit hole, and you just keep going deeper and deeper. It's just been amazing.
Well, for the audience, this is no BS here, because I mean, I had a blast in Miami. I met a lot of great people, but like when I met you and Tali, I could feel it. It's palpable. Your enthusiasm, your passion comes through, and it comes through strong. And that's one of the things that attracted me to you. So let's kind of like pick apart each of these things that you're doing real quick. First thing was HODL UP. Without getting too deep into it, speaking to somebody who's maybe newish to Bitcoin, it's a board game, but it's so much more.
Right.
Can you give us kind of your elevator pitch on what HODL UP is?
HODL UP. So I have a passion for board games. I go to a game conference every year with my brother, and it was originally just for fun. And if you were to make a Venn diagram and say, okay, well, here's this guy who homeschools and he likes board games and he got into this Bitcoin thing. That's kind of the intersection of all of those. And what happened was Tali and I, my wife is Tali, I was talking to her and I said, hey, you got to hear this podcast. You got to read this book. And I would just like go on about Bitcoin. And she's like, look, I'm trying to take care of kids. I'm trying to take care of food. I've got to take care of the dogs. I don't have time for this other stuff.
Bandwidth.
What happened was I took out, basically initially started with like Mahjong tiles, and then it was dice, and eventually cards, but it was physically showing her how transactions worked. That was the genesis of what later became HODL UP. And then HODL UP was just me continuing to follow my passion. It was like, well, I like games. I like learning about Bitcoin. So as I was learning things, I would update my prototype, and then I would go test it out. It took about 2 years.
Whew.
And the result is a game that you could sit down and play with anybody, know nothing about Bitcoin, and still have a good experience. So it's like, I would almost describe it in terms of like Catan. It takes 45 minutes. It's about half strategy and half luck, because there's some elements of luck in it. And I would say that's pretty close to what I wanted with HODL UP. I wanted something that was going to be fun, that if if you're a chess whiz and I play you, I'm always going to get beat. But if I play Catan, I have a little bit of luck in there, can kind of shake it up. So that's what resulted in HODL UP. Every mechanic of the game is based on something in Bitcoin, However, you don't need to know that in order to play. So what you end up with now is you have this game that can go two ways. I take it to you at a Bitcoin meetup, and man, people are out there with the slogan and they're talking smack and they're doing whatever. But I could also have a kids event, and I could say, bring your, this is literally just a game event. We're just going to have fun, and you take it out and you don't talk anything with the technical. And then if you have a question, you say, hey, Scott, why does the number go down in half a couple times in the game? Or why is this connected this way, every block to the block before it this way? And why this? Just pick anything in the game. One of the fun ones is the difficulty adjustment and putting things in cold storage protection. Kids pick this up really fast. But the point is, you just can have fun and you don't say anything until someone asks you a question. So it becomes a bridge for people like me who are very excited, and other people like my wife who may not be in the right mindset to listen. So that's it. You either have a fun game that you just play, or you can have a Bitcoin game and take it to some of your Bitcoin enthusiastic friends, and you guys can have some fun. So,
well, when I remember playing it in Miami, and at that time I already been in Bitcoin for 5 years, and by no means am I an expert in any one aspect. And Bitcoin is one of those things that has so many different ways you can go. I felt like I understood mining, and I played that game for that 45 minutes, and it just was so intuitive. It's like, oh, that makes sense. It's like it intuitively explains or shows you the incentive structure, the mechanics and the incentives and how they all kind of align. And that's when I actually first started to have a really good understanding of this whole idea of mining and how it relates. No, it was absolutely great. It was absolutely great.
Yeah, it's fun. I just want to have fun with it. We're going to have some different variations of it. I am in the process of sourcing for a Lightning game. I know we don't want to get technical on this, but for those that do get into Bitcoin, there are other areas, and the intent is to build other education games that go with them. And then I will take my notes and put them into a book so that if you play HODL Up and you want to know the behind the scenes, what's going on with those mechanics, I have a book, and I don't know if I have one handy. I got one behind me. It's a little hard to reach while we're talking, but if you want that, then that's a vision. Is we'll just keep on creating things that are fun by themselves, but also have educational value. And then for those that want to go deeper, say, okay, here's a resource you can go to. These are the resources we use to build this game. If you want to learn more, here's a starting point, and I can just hand it off to you.
Well, so speaking of education, I mean, we could go any which way. Would you rather start with free market kids or the homeschooling route? Which would make the most?
They overlap for me.
They really do.
They really overlap. So
maybe free market kids.
Okay.
What's your goal with that? Your philosophy behind free market kids?
It's similar to what I was just talking about. So Tali and I met in business school.
Oh, cool.
And we thought we understood money. And then we basically got rugged by the system. We did all the things you were supposed to do. But what this led to was heavy debt with the house, with student loans, eventually with credit cards, because we were trying to work on one income so that Tali could stay home with the kids and homeschool. And the short story is that we made a lot of mistakes while we did that. And in hindsight, after studying Bitcoin, I understand what was going on with money now that led to that. And the thought process for free market kids is, if 2 Yale MBAs can get rugged by this, like, what chance do our kids have? Ouch. Right? Yeah. And we're like, there's no freaking way we're letting that happen. And so the essence of free market kids starts with our kids. But we don't have a true free market today. And I didn't understand what that really meant until I studied Bitcoin, because then I got into Austrian economics and low time preference and a whole bunch of other things that I'm sure you would like to talk about. But I want our kids to benefit from what we've learned over the last few years with this, because money literacy is bad. It's bad across the board. And we're like, there's a better way. There's the material out there. And so now it's up to us to take action and share that. And so Free Market Kids is about, first and foremost, money literacy. So you can take that down to anything with Austrian economics. I have a passion. I would like to build some materials about energy literacy, because that's another area that I think we do very poorly on as a society. But it's primarily about giving kids, the next generation, the tools that they need to be successful. And if you don't understand how money impacts your food, education, it impacts certainly your buying decision. If you don't understand that, you are likely to have to work harder and harder and harder and get further and further and further behind. So the inspiration of Free Market Kids is to say, how do we reach that next generation? And it's not going to be podcasts. It's not going to be like me geeking out on Bitcoin podcasts and reading 100 books a year on whatever it is. And I don't read 100 books a year. I wish I could keep up with that pace. But sorry, the phone's going off there.
So is this more I would say upper grades? At what age range are you shooting for, or do you
middle school and up?
Middle school and up.
Yeah, we've had some.
Before that, they don't really need to know too much, and without a very solid math background, I would think it'd be harder.
I would caution you. Kids understand a lot more than we give them credit for, and if you let them, they will learn. So that's the homeschooling side coming in. If you let your kids be part of budgeting discussions, if you let your kids be exposed to other topics, they will surprise you. They can do a lot more than we give them credit for, a lot earlier than we give them credit for. So we've seen some very, very young kids play our game, like younger than 10. Like I think the youngest may have been 5, but you do have to have some math skills to play the game. But I would caution anyone to be careful of that trap. There is a trap that you're a certain age and you're a certain grade and you should be wherever. Cogswall. That's not true. Kids are amazing at what they can learn. And you asked me a general question. So the general age is basically like teenager and above, 13 above, but doesn't matter. You could present this with your kids super young and watch out. They grasp things.
I love that, because that actually reminded me of my son, who he's 10, and just because he's around me, he hears me talk about Bitcoin all the time. And I don't know how much stuff ever gets through. He's an intelligent kid. But this last holidays, we were sitting around the table, and literally the question of inflation came up. And without, nobody said the word inflation, but prices going up, all these little things. He's sitting here at the dinner table, and he's like, it's because of inflation. And he looks up at me, he's like, right? He's like, right? Because of the money printing? And I'm like, proud papa.
Yeah, there you go.
We got it. So yeah, absolutely. They're listening. Hopefully they're listening to the good stuff, right?
Yeah, right. So that's the passion, though. Like we want to do it first and foremost for our own kids, but this applies to everybody. Having been in the service, I feel very passionate about our country. I don't like the direction that we're heading today, but I'm still very patriotic. And there's also this gets back to the mission and the purpose, right? Yeah. So we want to help as many people as fast as we can to help learn these concepts. And listen, we have 20 years of homeschooling. We've been studying Bitcoin for a long period of time, and we're just combining all of these things together. And yes, we enjoy meeting people and traveling and doing these things. But when you hear a kid tell another kid, hey, you better put your Bitcoin in cold storage, like the fact that like they're listening and they're getting things, and it gives me hope for the future. And it ties back that the mission is it's like an infinite game. This is a cause that's bigger than ourselves. This has come up on a lot of other. This is not new in the Bitcoin circles, but it's a cause bigger than yourself, and that's where I would put it. It started with us and our family, but we see this as a much bigger part of a much bigger, broader mission.
Yeah. So I'm thinking of the average listener of this podcast. Probably, if they have kids, the kids are in public education, and they would agree with you most likely on most of what you're saying. teaching financial literacy, maybe not giving the kids enough credit, pushing them to where they can go. Maybe my school could do better. But going from this system that we have had in place for 50, 60 years now almost, to saying, okay, I'm going to jump to homeschooling. That's a pretty big jump. It's almost like people won't become Bitcoiners until they actually feel the pain. You know what I mean? Like in the people in the authoritarian countries, they're the ones that are feeling pain. It makes sense to go from 0 to 1 to Bitcoin. So in our system, maybe could you speak to that listener who's thinking, okay, Scott, you're making sense, but jumping right from what I got to homeschooling,
it's
how do we get from 0 to 1 there?
It's a full spectrum though. So let's say you for whatever reason you're a single parent, or maybe both you're married, but both you have to work because of where you are with rent and the cost of groceries, etc. It doesn't mean you can't do other things to help educate your kid at night or on the weekends or through activities. So there are principles that are involved, and the idea though, the spectrum is basically going from a state controlled top down type of environment that primarily rewards conformity and control, and on the opposite end of that is the full homeschooling family that is completely away from the government. So you have this thing in Bitcoin, you'll say separation of money and state, and the equivalent on the homeschooling side is the separation of education and state. So on the Bitcoin side, you'd say self-custody your Bitcoin, self-custody your keys. On the education side, this is about self-custodying. I'm having a little trouble here today. This is about self-custodying your education, right? Yeah. And if I go to a Bitcoiner and I say you should self-custody education, they get it. Like they get it fast. Separation of education state, bam, they get it fast. When you talk to a homeschooler, even though I have a lot of the same values, you have a lot of other things you're dealing with. You're probably in a budget situation because you're probably on a single income. You care so much. You've got a long list of things to get in, and a lot of the material in the homeschooling stuff is around personal finance and like a Dave Ramsey get out of debt, which is fine. Do personal financing, but that's not enough. Your wages are not keeping up with the cost of housing going up. So the American dream is completely at risk. So your question is, somebody is their kids are in public school, and then a guy like me comes along and says you should really consider this homeschooling thing. So it's number one, I'd say it's worth it. It's a matter of everybody's going to have to make their own balance. They're going to have to make their own decisions with their trade-offs that are involved. So for us, that trade-off was we'll go on fewer vacations. Maybe we won't have as fancy of a car. We'll eat out less. We'll do something. But if we can get by on one income so that Tali can stay home and teach the kids, then we're going to do it. And that was our internal discussion on what to do with it. Yeah. But I would say, first and foremost, you don't have to go all in. You can start by just supplementing whatever they're doing now with things that you find valuable. The second thing I would say is there are so many resources out there today that it's unbelievable. You don't have to be the expert in the thing that you want them to learn about. Tali would say, okay, I want them to learn about Greek and Latin and whatever else. Well, she doesn't, she's not a musician, right? She's not an expert in like all these other languages. And then you throw in science and other things. And so if today we're talking a lot about money, if you want to find a way to teach your kids more about money and supplement whatever they're getting in a public education, okay, maybe that's where you start. And you can say, I want it to be an online course, or I want it to be like this little summer boot camp type of thing, or it can be whatever it is. You want them to read certain books, and you're all going to talk about it together. There's like an infinite variety of ways that you can do it, but you can start small to do that. But I would tell you that there's a lot of material out there, and then there's also a lot of support systems. There are support systems that you can go to for example, for legal help. If you're in a state that happens to be more hostile to homeschooling than others, then there are funds that are set up where they'll say, hey, we're gonna try to help these folks. And it's everything from
like vouchers.
No, like it's I think it's called the Homeschooling Defense League.
Oh.
I can look at it. Tali has a few links on our website.
Well,
But the point is, you not only have support in terms of education materials that you can go out on certain levels of subjects. You don't need to be afraid of not knowing it yourself to do
right.
that. And
You're a
the other thing,
facilitator of
yeah,
information.
the other thing I'm trying to say is there's a support system for families from how are you going to do this, and that could be everything from the legal things you need to do. It's the curriculum. It could be, I mean, it could be anything, but it's more of the social support and the organizational support type of thing, not
Right.
necessarily the academic subject.
Sure.
Hey y'all, are you new to Bitcoin? You looking for a way to safely and securely store your Bitcoin? Check out the Bitcoin Advisors. These Bitcoiners are professionals that will provide you peace of mind so you can sleep soundly at night knowing your Bitcoin is safe. Remember to tell them Zoom Out sent you.
Expertise.
Well, and you said something a while back that really struck with me. You're talking about how it's an easy sell for Bitcoiners, separation of money and to me, one of the big problems, let's just focus on the money side of it with Bitcoin, is that whoever's in charge gets to kind of express their morals through the money system.
Yeah.
Right. Whether you agree with wars or not, or whether you agree with certain regulations or not, the printing of money, you're tacitly kind of approving their morals. And in a similar way, we're doing that with the public education. Whoever is making the rules is saying, this is what is important. And if you don't agree with enough of them, let's just say, or a few of them really strongly, that should give you some kind of pause in saying, maybe I shouldn't stay with this prepackaged, educational system. And then there's this alternative over here that offers that freedom for me to express what I believe our family's morals should be. I think to me that would be that connection between the, separation of church and state, or money and state, and separation of education and state.
Yeah.
So you have a couple different homeschool paths we can go, the Bitcoin homeschoolers. And you were just telling me recently that you're starting your own homeschool curriculum. Is that right?
We are. So the homeschooling podcast was based on, we went to a Bitcoin conference, a small one. There was a technical conference. And even though my wife and I are not technical, we had been invited to speak on a homeschooling panel. And there was a lot of excitement about it. And a lot of things that you and I just talked about resonated, and people would ask questions about it. And the podcast Bitcoin Veterans had recently come out, and I was like, well, why don't we have a Bitcoin homeschooler podcast? And that was we're 21 episodes into that. So that's where that started. And that was just because we found that there's an appetite for that subject. And we're like, well, this is what we know. We don't know how to code. We don't know how to build, whatever. We're not investors. We're not like a lot of these other things that you hear about with Bitcoin books. But we know homeschooling. What, if not us, then who? Let's go do this thing, right? And it's been pretty amazing. So you can invite on people that you're like, hey, it's just awesome. You just get to meet other people, and then when you have a connection, you can say, let's go talk. But last year we went to 2 homeschooling conferences to try to do the opposite, where we were trying to get the homeschoolers to see, here's what's going on with money, and here's what's going on with Bitcoin. We went to St. Louis and to Cincinnati to try it out. It was not an easy sell to try to tell them that this is what's going on with all the money. They're already overwhelmed with all the other things on their mind that they're trying to do.
Sure.
And then you come in there, and heaven forbid they see like the Bitcoin. They're like, I don't have time for you. Like they kind of they look at you a little strange. So we're going to go to another homeschooling conference this year, and we're just good. It's the same message though. We're just going to try to present it in a way that's easier to digest. So the courses that you just mentioned, we're launching one. Are we allowed to mention that on your thing?
Please.
Okay, so we're calling it the FMK, like Free Market Kids, FMK Academy. And we're the founding class. The first one we're going to do is basically, and we're calling it the Youth Financial Empowerment class. And we're going to make it a 5-day thing like you would do like on a spring break, like a boot camp. But the thought is a lot of homeschoolers go to these conferences and they're looking for ways of supplementing their curriculum.
Right.
And when we went last year, we couldn't offer that. We could have a conversation with them, but we couldn't help them with that. So even if I convinced, like you came to me last year, Tim, and okay, Scott, that sounds really interesting. I have a game here that can help teach something, but the onus would have been on them to package all that material together to understand what's going on with money. And there's just so much complexity in there. It's not an easy thing. So the course is meant to say, hey, the money's not working. Here's a lot of reasons why. And it's easy with inflation and other things that people can see. But now we can give them some vocabulary for that and say, if you think this is important, but you don't have time to put it together, we're going to work on that bridge to help that. So that's where those courses are going to go. And I'll say, just so for example, if you're schooling your kid, homeschooling, one of the companies that is very well known is the Tuttle twins. So they'll take books like Creature from Jekyll Island or Atlas Shrugged or something like that, and then they'll make it into a kids friendly book with the principles. And they now have, I think it's called Angel TV. They actually have their own programming on there, and they've had a couple episodes where they've been talking about money, and they had one in particular that talked about Bitcoin, right? So this is already an established player in the homeschooling area. The Tuttle twins are very, very well known. And so it reinforces what Tali and I are seeing as the trend. Eventually, homeschoolers will come to Bitcoin. Like it's inevitable. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah. I agree with that.
And the course that we're developing is just part of helping them along that. So as more and more people become interested in it, they want to incorporate it into their program, then we want to be there to help. And it doesn't start with, man, here's this technical thing and all the technical aspects about Bitcoin. First of all, that's not what you really need to know, right? That's not what you really need to know. Our opinion is you need to start with understanding what is money and why is that important? How does that impact my life and the things?
The why before the how. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's interesting because Tali and I thought that we were educated in this area and we thought we understood, and we were completely wrong. We completely missed it. And we're like, we want to start there. Let's help people understand that. And then from that, eventually you're going to get to like how technology has impacted money, the significance of what a truly decentralized money is in terms of, we won't get into all the technical, but there's a lot of things there that when you're ready for it, you have to have the context of why it's important.
It's like a car. You're not going to go up and think, how does that internal combustion work? Yeah. You're going to be like, I need to get from here to there faster, you know? Yeah. Exactly. And then in a way, that's what Bitcoin does. It's like takes money across space and time, right?
Exactly.
So I love the idea. So it's like, if I'm thinking of like, I'm going to homeschool my kids, you know, I'm personally a fan of Khan Academy for a lot of the math.
Yes.
The way they package that, and they have a lot of other things, but there are a lot of those components, those little, but there's nothing for Bitcoin yet. In quality, I would say, you know, there's a few videos out there. Also check out Zoom Out. But you know, it's the same kind of thing. I'm kind of going for the why a little bit with my videos as well, because that's definitely important. But then you got to really round that out like what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, we all got to do our part. I mean, there are people who come into Bitcoin that came from a business standpoint, and then they apply it that way. And there are people who they were artists, and they come in and they become artists in the Bitcoin area. There's journalists that come in that we're homeschoolers. We're just coming into it from that angle. That's the area that we know. That's the area we can contribute. And it's not like you need just one person to come and teach everyone. Everybody's different, right? And this happens to be our area. So,
and if I could get a little like more meta with that, the biggest thing to me is the decentralization aspect of it. What you're talking about, having all of these specialists all over the place, kind of adding to this concept. If you think about like the centralized system, all the energy has to go into it, and some of it gets lost, and then the rest come out and maybe not reaches the far reaches of society. But when you have like a decentralized system, it's like everybody's able to put in what they are best at, and they're also able to take out the energy from the system for which they deserve. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
To me, the whole idea of the decentralization is just a much more equitable way for energy to flow
It is.
throughout the system.
It communicates value, right, across what is needed where. It's like a free market, right? And pricing is
Imagine
going to
that.
communicate value. And if you don't have a free market because of the government are either punishing some with like whatever regulations or other
Sure.
things, or they're helping out their buddies that give them the big grants, right? And or you're bailing out the banks or somebody big, the too big to fail kind of thing. But what you do is you now have a centrally controlled system, but it's not as efficient, and it's
Nope.
hard to tell where those resources are best needed. And so what you have overall is you have a few people who benefit a lot if they're close to the central decision maker. But overall, everybody is worse off than if you have a decentralized system. Think about nature, right? Nature doesn't have like there's a whole ecosystem of animals and plants and
They don't have to check compliances
mycelium.
and
No, they don't do
regulations.
that. Like it's like if you water, you go to where the water is. If you need plants, you go to plants. If you need like other animals to eat, like whatever it is, like nature like balances out, and it doesn't need someone to sit there and go, okay, you need to go there and you need to go there. And in a free market, you're communicating value through pricing, and you don't need to know all the reasons. You just need to know like where that value is, and it's beautiful. And that's decentralized though. You need to let it go, and then you have special. You need to have you end up with specialization and the benefits of trade and all the other things you get into with economics in a free market, and that's a beautiful part about a decentralized system. And there are so many other things that happen with it, and it's that could be a whole hour of discussion.
Oh gosh, right.
At least on centralization versus decentralization.
Well, and that's kind of what I'm saying is like, it's not just here we talk about Bitcoin and how it's decentralized and how it allows value to be flow freely, so to speak. But the same could be said for homeschooling, right? Like, not only is not every child the same type of learner or interested in the same things, but yet we're all still giving them the same thing. So that's not allowing that energy to flow. Maybe somebody's could be a really great artist or engineer or something, but that energy that we're pushing towards them to do this is kind of just wasted.
Yeah.
That artist, okay, now they might know algebra, but are they really going to use it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think parents, you can't get any more decentralized than having families or parents teaching their kids in terms of decentralized schooling, right? And they're going to know best what their kid needs. This one has special needs and they need to have like whatever. This one is actually really smart, but it's in this area, and we're going to let them excel in that area and not hold them back. And there's a beauty in that. And if you say, well, it's going to be cookie cutter, and we're going to kind of gear the class towards the median. If you're not smart enough or too smart, you're going to get kind of lost on the periphery of the system. And it's all about, again, it all goes back to what's rewarded in the public system. Well, it's conformity, right? And then you get other players influenced in there by money, and so it's corrupted, and the incentives are no longer aligned. Whereas a parent and their kids, their incentives are aligned in that they want the best for their kids' future success. And the only way that you can kind of maximize the value overall is decentralized. Let the parents do it. And I know that this is theoretical and not everybody can do that.
Sure.
But it's consistent with the value of a decentralized system. So.
Absolutely. Scott, I love this conversation. I could talk like this for hours. This is, it's my jam. Is there anything that we missed? Anything you want to touch on?
We're gonna, but Tali and I love to meet people in person. So what I can
We're
do is
still going to try and get you out to Lincoln Land Bitcoin.
What's that?
We're going to still try to get you out to Lincoln Land Bitcoin for HODL Up.
Yeah, let's get you. We'll get you. We'll send you a free copy of the school version of it, and we just need to talk afterwards about doing that.
Yeah.
But we love meeting people though, and people can reach out to us. I'll give all the social and emails and whatever else to you to post
put in
on
the show
there.
Notes, all that. Yeah.
If people happen to be going to these conferences, we can meet in person. That's also pretty awesome. But it doesn't mean that we can't help each other by whatever other means communication. The thing that I would like to really, we do need help. This is our foundation course that we're launching, and so we need feedback on that. So we're offering $200 off on that. If I could give you that information to put out there too. So it's fmkacademy.com, and we're very excited about that. We're going to present that in person when we get to the Cincinnati Homeschool Convention, but we want to get the foundation course moving. And if someone wants to basically allow Tali and I to give, it's basically like 10 lessons, but it's done over 5 days. And we would love the opportunity to try to help teach other kids about money. And we need feedback. So if somebody in your audience is at all interested in that, we would be very interested in trying to work with them. So I'd like to do that. And
I got a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old, so count me in.
Okay. All right. Well, but it's been an honor to be on here. I'm looking forward to more podcasts like yours getting out there, and more books like yours. Like, we just keep, like, the energy behind this movement is so strong.
It really is
so strong. And when you talk to other people, you mentioned at the beginning of here, so the same goes for you. You can feel the passion. You can feel that you have this calling. You're going to make this impact, and I think that's awesome. And I just want to say thank you for inviting me on your show. And we need to talk more frequently than once a
year or twice a year, right?
So,
well, Scott, it's been an absolute honor to have you on. Thank you. Tell Tali I said hi. I hope to see you in Nashville.
We will be there.
All right.
So,
ladies and gentlemen, Scott Lindberg, thank you very much for coming on Zoom Out.